Okay, thanks, Anusha. I think we can start the webinar. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Blue Ops, detecting and stopping S3 attacks. I'm Nandini Bharadwaj, the operating officer at CWL, and your host for today's session. So let's start the webinar. It's fantastic to have you all here with us today. So let's get started. Okay, so before starting, let me introduce our company, like what we do. So we are CW Labs, a global infosec company shaping the future of cybersecurity learning with a presence across UK, US, and India. Our mission is simple: make cybersecurity practical and accessible. We do this through our two powerful division. Number first is Niche Cyber Range Labs. It's a real-world simulated hands-on cyber labs. And number second is continuously learning platform, that is Infinity Learning Platform. It's a continuously learning hub built for anyone who wants to upskill in cybersecurity practically. Additionally, CWL also provide customized on-site training for organization and accept bulk order for corporate upscaling. So for more inquiries or for more detail, feel free to reach out us at support@cyberwarfare.live. So that's all about the company. Let's move on to next slide. Okay, so up next we have the speaker of today's webinar, that is Ranjita V. She's currently working as a security intern at Cyber Warfare Labs, and she has a keen interest in defensive security operations, and today she will be sharing her insights and experience in this domain. So that's all about the speaker. Also, I'm pleased to share that all the attendees will get 100% off coupon code of Infinity Premium Learning Platform at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for that. Along with that, you will also get a certificate of attendance. So that's it about the speaker and information. Now I would like Ranjita to take over.
So, hello everyone, and thank you, Nandini, ma'am, for your warm introduction about me. So, I would also like to welcome all of you to this webinar. So, this is a webinar on brute force attack on an S3 bucket. So, today we'll look at how attackers try to brute force an S3 bucket, why it's a serious issue, and how we can detect and stop them using the logs. So first we will see the table of contents, that is what are the content we are going to um, so we'll see what are the contents we are going to cover in this webinar. So the table of contents include, first one is what is a bucket, that is we're going to learn what is a bucket and what is a brute bucket. So this brute bucket is a main topic of this webinar. So the third thing is why it matters, that is why the attack on the S3 bucket matters as a cybersecurity professionals. And the fourth is detecting suspicious activity, that is we will be focusing on how to detect a brute force attack in an S3 bucket. So the next one would be stopping brute force attempts. So if any brute force attack is happening on an S3 bucket, how should we stop it? And last, we will be solving a challenge on Infinity platforms based on these attacks, and we'll find a flag and we'll answer the questions asked in the Infinity platforms. So let's move on to the next slide. So first is, what is a bucket? So an S3 bucket is a storage container in Amazon Web Services used to store and organize data such as files, logs, or backups. So each bucket has a unique name and acts as a root folder in the cloud. So this S3 bucket is simply a storage container in AWS. So we can think of it as a root folder in a cloud where we can store all the files, all the logs, and the backups. So, and also each bucket has a very unique name, and the access to these buckets is controlled through various policies and permissions. That is, not everyone can access every bucket. each bucket has its own permissions and policies. Okay, next we'll see what is brute bucket. So brute bucket is a type of attack where hackers repeatedly guess S3 bucket names until they find one that exists and is misconfigured. So the goal is to uncover sensitive data stored in the exposed buckets. So brute bucket, we have, I'm sure that you must have heard many brute force attacks on web applications, accounts, or any web pages that contains a username and password like this. So here, the brute force attack is happening on a bucket. So brute bucket is a type of attack. What hackers do is they repeatedly try to guess the name of the S3 bucket. So once they find a bucket that is that is a real bucket, and if that bucket is misconfigured, the attackers can potentially gain access to the data that is inside this bucket. So it's a very serious issue, because there will be data leak, data theft, data breaches happening because of these brute force attacks. So the main goal of the attackers will be to uh, access the sensitive data stored in these buckets. So next, we're going to see why it matters. That is, why the attacks on the S3 bucket matters. So the first thing is sensitive data leakage risk. That is, if an attacker gains access to a bucket and the bucket is misconfigured, obviously he's going to steal the data inside the bucket. So there will be a data leakage risk that will happen. So the second thing will be compliance violations. So if an attacker gains access to the bucket and there is sensitive information inside it, the data theft, data leak will happen. So this violates many compliance regulations. So the compliance risk is higher. So the third will be, it can be entry point for further attacks. So once the attacker gain access to the information inside the bucket, there will be sensitive informations, very important information about an organization, about personal, everything. So what he'll do is he will use that information for further data breaches, that is larger data breaches. The fourth one would be reputational damage. So if there is an organization and the attack has been happened, and the attacker has gained access, so there is unauthorized access happening there. So this will lead customers to lose trust in the organizations. So there is a reputational damage. The final point will be financial impact. Data breaches can lead to fines, legal cost, and expensive remediation efforts. So there will be financial impact happening here. So next, we have understood why this attacks, why brute force attack on S3 bucket matters. So next we'll be moving on to how to detect these type of attacks, like how to detect there is an brute force attack happening in the S3 bucket. So first is to analyze AWS cloud trial or VPC flow logs. So this we'll be doing now. That is, we will be analyzing the cloud trial logs. So in that, we have to look for repeated head bucket or list object failures. And the second point is high request volume from unusual IPs. So since this is an brute force attack, obviously a single IP sends multiple request until the correct bucket name is found. So there will be high volume from an IP. So the third thing we should see is patterns in bucket name guesses. That is, if an attacker is using a dictionary style attack, or is using a sequential style attack, we can see the patterns in the bucket name he is guessing. So by that we can confirm that there is a brute force attack happening in the bucket. So next, okay. So next we're going to see stopping brute force attempts. That is, if we find that the brute force attack is happening, we should stop it, right? So let us see how to stop those attacks. So the first one would be enable S3 block public access. That is, we should prevent buckets from being exposed to the public by default. So the public shouldn't see that there is a bucket there. So the next point would be use IAM policies and least privilege. So we have to ensure that every bucket is accessed by certain set of people who has permission to access it, and a certain set of services. So in that people who have permission to access, we should segregate them based on privileges, because our admin user should have most privilege. So the normal user shouldn't have the privilege as much as the admin user has. So we have to enforce IAM on the buckets. So the third one would be configure cloud trail alerts. So what we have to do is we have to collect the logs from the cloud and transfer it to Wazoo or any SIEM for that matter. So we should transfer it, and we should configure it in such a way that it would give us the alerts if any suspicious thing or suspicious logs are present in the cloud. So the fourth one would be automate blocking through AWS web application firewall or security rules. So this is like intrusion prevention system that is not only detecting or alerting the administrator, the system should block the attack as soon as it happens, because once we stop it immediately, many data, many things can be saved, right? So we have to implement intrusion prevention system there. So the final point would be proactive monitoring. So proactive monitoring means we should monitor continuously, so that if any alert or if any suspicious activity is happening, we should like immediately stop it, so it would stop the further destruction. Okay, so next, the challenge part. So we will be going to solve this challenge on Infinity platform. So the challenge is, so in this scenario, as a part of Secure Corp's security team, you are responsible for detecting and investigating suspicious brute force attempts targeting the bucket Secure Corp images. That is, there is a bucket name Secure Corp images. What we have to do is we have to investigate the suspicious brute force attack happening in that bucket. So how we solve it? So by investigating CloudTrail logs and identifying repeated failed requests, we can uncover brute force attempts. So using alerts and automated responses, we can stop attackers before they gain access. Okay, so before moving on to the challenge, let's see the investigative mind map. So first, the Secure Corp Cyber Defense team, that is we. What we gonna do is we have to log into the Elastic where logging and monitoring is happening. So we should be focusing on these four things mainly. That is S3 access logs, HTTP GET request, access denied, and get.object. So why we should be focusing on only these things? I'll explain. So first, this S3 access logs. So these S3 access logs records every request made to the bucket. So since the attack is happening on the bucket, we when we prioritize the S3 access logs, we can get some clue on what is happening there. So next is HTTP GET request. So this HTTP GET request shows attempts to read data from the bucket. This shows like who are trying to read data from the bucket. So the third one would be access denied. So since this is a brute force attack, obviously there will be multiple failure attempts before the attacker succeeds. So first we have to see how many failure attempts have been happened. So the last point is get out object. So why we have to prioritize get out object is the main The main objective of the attacker is to retrieve the objects from the bucket. So this get out objects shows the successful retrieval of an object from the bucket. So when we prioritize this get out object, we can see how many attempts or who has attempted to retrieve data from the bucket. So now let's move on to the challenge. Okay. So this is a challenge we are going to solve. So the challenge name is Brood Bucket. Okay. So as a member of Secure Corp's security team, you are responsible for identifying suspicious S3 bucket object brute forcing targeting Secure Corp images. That is, there is a bucket named Secure Corp images, and you like a brute force attack is happening over that bucket. So we should investigate. We should investigate and also answer this question. The question is identify and determine the event count associated with the S3 bucket object brute forcing activity. So we have to give the count on how many times the attacker is trying to access the bucket or access the object on the bucket. So first, we'll look into the description. So the description says the primary objective of this challenge is to detect and investigate suspicious bucket object brute forcing within an enterprise AWS environment. So participants will act as a security analyst to identify and investigate logs and events which are accumulated from the S3 access log to identify the bucket object brute forcing. The challenge will assess their knowledge of S3 access logs, the best practices for monitoring and securing AWS resources like S3 buckets. So here it says a main objective is to investigate a suspicious attack that has been happening in the S3 bucket named the Secure Corp images. So attacker has tried to access the objects from the bucket. So I have to investigate how many times the attacker has tried to access the object through brute forcing. Okay. So next, we will be provided the initial access. That is, the participant is provided with access to the ELK and permissions to view S3 access logs. And also, AWS S3 access logs is enabled and configured to log all API activities within the AWS account. That is, the log which is provided for us has all the S3 access log data. So all the data that we need to investigate the attack is already present in the logs. So this why monitoring S3 bucket object brute forcing is crucial. We have explained this, like the security issue, data privacy issue, and compliance issues. So let's move on to the attack flow. So okay, this is an attack flow. So what happened is there is an attacker. He's trying to brute force a S3 bucket which is publicly accessible. So this is the thing, like this is the reason why we should like stop buckets from being exposed to the public. So if the bucket is publicly accessible, the attacker can try attacks on it. Okay, so there is an attacker is trying to brute force an S3 bucket which is publicly accessible, and he's trying to retrieve the object that is present inside the bucket. Okay, so let's move on to solve the challenge. So here the solution contains investigative mind map which I already explained. So let's move on to step one. So step one would be like logging into the SIEM solution using the username and the password given. So we should do that. So I'll be starting the lab. Okay. So we can use this URL. Okay. We have logged into the Elastic. So second step would be navigate to the Discover section. So we'll first expand the time range. So here you can see the logs. So over 60,000 something logs are present here. So we should investigate now. So here, the third step would be prioritizing the CloudTrail logs. So why we are prioritizing CloudTrail logs is we are like investigating an attack in AWS, right? So first we have to prioritize the CloudTrail logs. Let's do that. Okay, now we have prioritized the CloudTrail logs. So there are almost 52,000 of logs present. So next, we should prioritize the S3 bucket because the attack is happening on an S3 bucket. So we should prioritize the logs that are related to the S3 bucket. So let's do that. Okay. So these are the logs that is related to both CloudTrail and also S3 bucket. So next, a step is to like prioritize the failure attempts because as I said, since it is a brute force attack, there will be multiple failure attempts before a successful one. So first we have to prioritize the failure attempts. So let's prioritize the outcome failure. Let's do that. Okay. So there are over 17,000 failure attempts happening. So the final step would be prioritizing the get object request because as I said, the main goal of the attacker is to retrieve the object inside the bucket. So let's see how many times he had attempted to retrieve the object. So let's copy this and let's investigate. Okay, here you can see 22 logs are related to this. So from this we can understand that 22 times the attacker has attempted to retrieve the object from the bucket. So here we'll give the flag answer, that is 22. Let's submit and see if this is right. Okay, I think there is an issue here. The 22 is the right answer. Okay. Sorry for this, but there is an issue. Actually, the 22 is the right answer. So, yeah. So the key takeaway is the buckets may look simple, but without monitoring, they can be a big risk. So always log, always alert, and always block suspicious activity. That's how we stay ahead of attackers. Okay, so with this challenge, we saw how attackers try to brute force buckets and how we can detect them through failed log events and stop them with the right security measures. That's the power of good monitoring and response. So, okay, that's it from my side. So thank you everyone who joined this webinar and thank you for your time and attention. So if you guys have any queries or any questions related to this webinar, you can ask me. You can drop the questions in the question section. I'll be answering that. Okay. Are there any possible ways the attackers might try to get the bucket that we need to prepare for it to see in the logs? Okay, yeah. There will be like there are multiple attacks beyond this S3 brute forcing, which includes like he can access through session hijacking, he can inject a malware, a ransomware attacks, or any insider threat that is uh, the threats is within the organization. So yeah, there are possible alerts, but prioritizing the S3 input type, we can find all these logs. Are there any log sample? Like you can see it on our Infinity platform where there are logs for various types of attacks. Public repository of S3 attacks, yeah, like the investigation I now did was the bucket was publicly accessible, so the attacker has gained access to the bucket. So I think that log can help. You're welcome. Yeah, sure. Okay, so if there are no any questions, I think we can end this webinar. How can I learn more about S3 attacks for multiple attacks variations? Okay, yeah, as I said, there are multiple attacks on S3 bucket. So in Infinity platform, will provide logs for multiple types of attacks where you can investigate and find the flag answer. So I think that might help you. You're welcome. Okay, so I think we can end this session here. Yes, you're going to get the certificate and coupon through email. Uh, is there any disco voucher to blue team or purple team certifications? I don't have an idea on that. I'll let my team know, and they will answer you through email. Thank you, Rohit. Are there any internships available at CWL? Uh, I have no idea about it, but I'll surely let my team know. I think you'll get the response through the email. Thank you, Piyush. Okay, I think we'll end this session here. So if you have any other queries, you can reach out to at support at cyberwarfare. And thank you everyone who joined this session and patiently waited. So thank you for your time and attention. Thank you very much.